How's it going? I'm meteorologist Craig Flint. Thanks for joining us for another edition of Weather Academy here on YourErie.com. This one's going to be a little different, if you will allow me to get on my meteorological high horse a little bit, because we're going into winter. It's just a couple weeks away, the solstice, all right? And one of my biggest pet peeves when it comes to the weather and different terms and terminology in meteorology. And a lot of that has to do with social media, and you got your hashtags going on and other media outlets trying to get the clickbait. So what I'm going to do is I've picked 3 terms that really just grind my gears. And I'm going to explain what they are and why, and just kind of give you a little context before you just go out there and say these terms. Because, you know, there's a specific criteria for each of these terms, and there's a specific meaning. So I've highlighted 3 of them, and we're going to kind of dive into those right now. So the first one, who has not heard of the term polar vortex? Yeah. So, several years ago, I think it was the Weather Channel. I don't want to pick on the Weather Channel, but someone decided to coin the term polar vortex. Well, here's the thing. They didn't coin anything because the polar vortex has been around forever. It's not anything new. But ever since that day several years ago, or that particular cold snap, this is the term that gets thrown around readily now. And I just kind of want to dive into what the polar vortex is and kind of explain how it works, and tell you why, look, it's not really that big of a deal. It's not anything new. It's been around for a while. So the polar vortex, if you haven't heard of it, I don't know where you've been, but it seems like every cold outbreak is the polar vortex, which is not the case. So let's dive in, all right? Polar vortex is, well, as the name implies, located near the poles. And basically what this is a large vortex that resides at the poles, and it's basically bottling up a bunch of cold air, all right? Little background on the polar vortex, okay? It's about 7 miles up into the atmosphere. And the term vortex just speaks to the wind that rotates around this thing, okay? Here's why this is not a huge deal. This thing has been there since the beginning of meteorology and studying meteorology. It's not new, okay? It's there year-round. And now, does this impact us? Yeah. But it's not like this whole area up here leaves the pole and comes south to you and me. That's not how it works. So basically, the wind around this thing, and when I talk about wind around this vortex, I'm talking 200-mile-an-hour wind. Okay, it's no slouch. So basically what that does is it tends to bottle all the cold air up over the poles, right? And when the winds are fast, if you think of a spinning top, you know, that top really spinning around really fast. It doesn't really move too much other than the rotation of it. But when it starts to slow down, it gets a little discombobulated and it starts wobbling a little bit more. So why does all this occur? Well, it has to do with the Earth's rotation and something called the Coriolis force, which if you want to learn more about that, head to the Google machine, because that's a whole lesson in and of itself. So that's basically the reason why this thing rotates and why the wind up here is so fast, and how it kind of keeps the cold air bottled up here. Now, you might be wondering, well, what happens when the wind slows down? Remember the spinning top analogy that I used. So the strong winds keep the cold air bottled up. Now, remember how I said it has to do with the Earth's rotation? Well, in the winter, there's less direct sunlight, less direct rays at the pole. I'll go into the southern hemisphere in the winter. So what happens is when the Earth tilts away from the sun, if the sun were over there, the winds around the polar vortex slow down. So kind of visualize this. Now, I'm a pretty animated guy, as you guys know. So this thing in the summer, it's still there, doesn't go anywhere in the summer. It's not like it just goes away. It's still there. But this thing in the summer, the winds around that thing is spinning like crazy, right? Well, when the Earth starts to tilt away from the sun, those winds slow down, okay? And as the winds slow down, it kind of becomes a little bit more disorganized and it wobbles, okay? So that's that spinning top analogy. So why does it get cold? Well, first of all, like I said, not every cold outbreak is the polar vortex. Again, this thing doesn't leave the pole and come south. What happens is we get little pieces, little vestiges that break off from this thing as those winds start to slow down and it wobbles around. And basically what happens is you got to look towards the jet stream. And if you've watched me for any length of time, I'm always saying, look, the jet stream drives weather at the surface. So what happens is as the winds slow down, this thing starts to wobble a little bit more, and the jet stream will dip, okay? Takes on a orientation like that. So it's all about the flow of the jet stream. And when those winds are weaker, those wobbles in the polar vortex can come south. The whole polar vortex doesn't come south. It's just a little piece of it that comes south, okay? So before you go on, your social media or the gram or the Facebook and say, when we get cold, #polar vortex, not everything's the polar vortex. Like I said, that thing stays up there at the pole and it just kind of breaks off little pieces of cold air that rotate down in the winter. That's the polar vortex, all right? Nothing new. Next one on my list of pet peeves, I guess you could call them. Well, we've heard this one too. Bomb cyclone. Yeah, I mean, that was a phrase that was coined years and years and years ago, but just recently became sexy, if you will, for the clickbait. It's a thing, okay? It's actually referred to as bombogenesis. What in the world is bombogenesis? Well, that is a name or a term in meteorology that has to be earned. Not every swirl in the atmosphere or every little curlicue in the atmosphere is a bomb cyclone, okay? There's specific criteria for bombogenesis, and here's what it is. It's a rapidly strengthening area of low pressure. So as a storm lowers its air pressure, it gains in strength. But in order for it to obtain the term bombogenesis, the central pressure of that storm has to drop 24 millibars within 24 hours. If it doesn't meet that criteria, it's just a regular storm. It's not a bomb. It's not a bomb cyclone. It's not any of that, okay? That is a term that has to be earned, okay? But again, as we go into the winter and we start to get these storms that hook up the coast, you're going to hear it. Bomb cyclone. Let's just pump the brakes, okay? Not every storm is a bomb cyclone either, all right? So it's just another term that, again, is kind of overused and misused. And if it doesn't meet that criteria, it can't be called a bomb cyclone or it can't undergo bombogenesis. So a little context on that one for you. The last one that really I hear being misused all the time is blizzard. What's a blizzard? Well, you're thinking heavy snow and wind and all this other stuff. Brutal cold. Did you know that you could have blizzard conditions when the sun's out? It's true. The snow doesn't have to be falling for it to be a blizzard. It's more about the wind. So when we talk about blizzards, there's a certain criteria that blizzards have to meet, or storms have to meet to become a blizzard. And here are those criteria. So the wind, sustained wind speeds, which means they're constant, has to be at least 35 miles per hour, or frequent gusts at or over 35 miles per hour. The visibility has to be less than a quarter of a mile, and it has to last for 3 hours or more. If it cannot meet any of these criteria, it's not a blizzard, okay? A heavy snow shower is not a blizzard. You know, when people come up to me and say, hey, it was like a blizzard yesterday because it was a heavy snow. Well, if it didn't last for 3 hours, it can't be classified as a blizzard. If you could see greater than a quarter of a mile, can't be classified as a blizzard. How strong were the winds? Those are the factors that we have to look at in order to classify a blizzard. So there are just 3 terms that I hear way too much and that are overused regularly. But there are certain criteria that each one of those has to meet in order to attain that term. So again, kind of a recap for you. Polar vortex, okay, nothing new, been there forever. It doesn't leave the pole and come down here. Bomb cyclone, bombogenesis, again, specific criteria. It has to drop 24 millibars within 24 hours or it's not undergoing bombogenesis. And we just discussed blizzard and the criteria of a blizzard. So if you're gonna, as we go into the winter, and you're gonna start getting on the social media platforms and posting this stuff with these hashtags, hashtag polar vortex, hashtag bombogenesis, hashtag blizzard, just make sure that you're using them correctly. That's all I ask. That's all. So there you go. The chips are down. I hope that kind of gives you a little bit more insight of what those terms are because, like I said, they've been around for a long time, and it's really nothing that new. But with this digital age and social media, like I said, it's that for lack of a better term, it just sounds sexy to say, right? So those are the 3 that I hear often that are either overused or misused. I know this was kind of a weird one, but I just wanted to kind of put some things into context, clear some things up for you. Hey, and if you have anything that you want us to cover, don't forget you can email us at weather@wjettv.com. We'll be back next week with another topic here on the Weather Academy. Thanks for watching, and remember, don't forget to stop learning and always look for what inspires you. We'll see you next week.